There's something deeply unsettling about a train that stops in the middle of nowhere. Steam still rising from its wheels, carriages creaking in the mist, passengers slowly realizing that something is terribly wrong. This is how Fear and Hunger 2 Termina begins. Not with a bang, but with the quiet dread of 14 strangers discovering they're trapped in a city that shouldn't exist. The train itself becomes a microcosm of humanity in crisis. A boxer with bandaged hands sits across from a journalist clutching her camera. A man in a yellow robe meditates while a chef nervously checks his kitchen knives. A botanist in a wheelchair discusses strange dreams of a young soldier who can't stop shaking. These people aren't heroes, they're humans, each carrying their own burdens, their own secrets, their own reasons for boarding a train to Prelude. Their initial conversations reveal both the banality of their situations and hints of the horror to come. Polite small talk tinged with growing unease as the mist outside grows thicker and that sickly green moon peers down through breaks in the clouds. Released in late 2022 by developer Miro Havinen, Termina isn't just another horror game. It's a meditation on human nature pushed to its absolute limits, wrapped in the skin of an RPG Maker release. Where its predecessor, Fear and Hunger, explored the horrors buried beneath us, Termina asks what happens when those horrors rise to meet us in broad daylight. Or rather, under the watching eye of a moon that seems to take pleasure in human suffering. But before we delve into Fear and Hunger 2 Termina, if you do enjoy at any point, or have enjoyed so far, please consider liking and subscribing. You don't have to, but it would be greatly appreciated. Anyway, back to the video. The setting is 1942, but not our 1942. This is an alternate Europe where magic and monsters are documented facts of life, where the recently ended Second Great War left scars both physical and supernatural. Gods walk these lands, not as distant myths, but as terrible realities. Old gods who embody the very concepts of creation and destruction, ascended gods who were once human, but transformed themselves into something more. New gods who gained great power, but retained their mortality, and perhaps their humanity. Their conflicts shape the world in ways both subtle and catastrophic, and Prelude sits at the center of their largest power struggle. The city itself is a testament to humanity's hubris. Its towering spires and ancient churches reaching towards heavens that might have been better left undisturbed. The layout tells its own story. The poverty-stricken old town with its desperate rituals, the modern shopping district's facade of normalcy, the temple district where multiple faiths compete for dominance. Underground tunnels hint at military secrets, while overhead that eternal moon keeps watch. Every street, every building, every darkened window seems to hold both history and threat. Religion permeates every aspect of Prelude's existence, but this isn't the comfort of simple faith. These are religions born of desperation, of trying to understand forces beyond human comprehension. The Church of Omni stands prominent in the city center, its crosses and rituals, familiar yet somehow wrong. Secrets whispered in confessional booths take on new meanings when gods are provable facts rather than matters of faith. Even the most hardened atheist must question their stance when divine power manifests in ways both miraculous and horrifying. What makes Termina remarkable isn't just its horror, although there's plenty of that, but how it weaves together the cosmic and the deeply personal. Every monster you encounter was once human. Every ritual circle you discover was drawn by desperate hands. Every choice you make ripples through a community in its death throes. And the only question is whether you'll try to save it or speed its demise. The game's central premise emerges through shared dreams and whispered rumors. Only one person can leave Prelude alive after 3 days. Those who refuse to participate face a fate worse than death, transformation into something that reflects their deepest fears and regrets. But this isn't just another battle royale. It's a stage for examining how people behave when the structures of civilization crumble, when the divine and the mortal collide, when the only choices left are impossible ones. Each character brings their own perspective to this nightmare. The journalist seeks truth in a city built on lies. The botanist studies life in a place consumed by death. The occultist returns home to face both personal and cosmic demons. The boxer's fists prove useless against enemies that attack the mind as much as the body. Their stories interweave and diverge based on player choice, creating a tapestry of human experience in the face of the incomprehensible. And above it all looms that watching moon, grinning down at human suffering like a child with a magnifying glass pointed at ants. But these ants have names, they have dreams, they forge relationships that form and shatter as the hours tick by. And most importantly, they have choices. Choices that will determine not just their own fates, but perhaps the very nature of humanity's relationship with the divine. In this essential tension between cosmic horror and human intimacy, between divine power and mortal choice, between survival and sacrifices, Termina finds its unique voice. The game asks us fundamental questions about human nature. What do we become when pushed to our limits? Can community survive in the face of inevitable betrayal? Is transcendence worth the cost of our humanity? These questions become increasingly relevant as our own world faces its share of seemingly insurmountable horrors. As the train sits motionless in the mist, let's meet the passengers who will become our windows into Prehivel's nightmare. Each brings their own skills, secrets, and reasons for coming to this cursed city. Their stories weave together to create a tapestry of human experience on the edge of catastrophe. Karen Sawyer grips her camera like a weapon, a journalist who's covered wars, you know. She arrives in Prehivel chasing rumors of military experiments and institutional corruption. Her defiant stance masks a deeper determination. She's seen what powerful institutions can hide, and she's made it her mission to expose the truth, no matter the cost. Her expertise with locks and talent for persuasion make her as dangerous with words as others are with weapons. Marina Domek knows Prehivel streets better than most. She grew up here before leaving to study occultism in the Vatican. Now she returns, her knowledge of ancient rituals competing with childhood memories of a city that seems increasingly alien. Her ability to harness otherworldly powers comes with its own price, but in a city where reality itself seems to be unraveling, such skills might mean the difference between survival and transformation. Marco's bandaged hands tell their own story. An underground boxer who's fought his way through life, he finds himself in Prehivel for reasons he'd rather not discuss. His physical strength and fighting experience makes him a formidable ally. But in a city where the greatest threats attack the mind rather than the body, how much value do strong fists really have? Quite a lot, actually, but... Olivia Haas's wheelchair might seem like a limitation in a survival situation, but her botanical knowledge and scientific mind offer unique advantages. She navigates Prehivel's hostile architecture with determination, turning obstacles into opportunities. Her search for answers about her missing sister drives her forward, even as the city's supernatural elements challenge everything she understands about the natural world. Daan carries himself with a doctor's authority, his medical bag at the ready. The eye patch he wears hints at personal sacrifices made in pursuit of knowledge that bridges modern medicine and ancient healing arts. His skills can mean the difference between life and death, but his past suggests he knows more about both than he's willing to share. Osa stands apart, his yellow robes marking him as something other than the typical European traveler. A practitioner of magics that use divine power for personal gain rather than worship. He's drawn to Prehivel by whispers of cosmic significance. His presence suggests the festival's influence reaches far beyond Europe's borders. But beyond that, he stands as a stark connection to the original Fear and Hunger. As before the events of Termina, we learn that he had ventured into the depths of the dungeon, shown in his character backstory, which plays out like an actual text-based game rather than the choices that could be found in other characters. But in his return to the dungeon, he found the charred and disfigured remains of the new god Nazra after his confrontation against the traces of Grogaroth, but still living. Nazra serves as an important information provider, providing much-needed context and making Osa significantly more knowledgeable than most of the other contestants. Levi's youth belies his experience with violence. His military-issue uniform and intimate knowledge of firearms speak to time spent in uniform, but his nervous glances and shaking hands suggest deeper trauma. Returning to Prehivel seems to both comfort and disturb him. This is his hometown, but not as he remembers it, as the only comfort he can now find lies inside a needle. Abella approaches the city's mysteries with an engineer's precision. Her mechanical expertise and practical mindset offer a grounded perspective on Prehivel's increasingly inexplicable events. Something about the city's infrastructure has caught her attention, particularly those mysterious tunnels that seem to run deeper than any civilian project should. These 8 individuals might seem like an unlikely group of heroes, and perhaps that's exactly the point. They're humans caught in the gears of forces beyond their comprehension. Their strengths and weaknesses, hopes and fears, reflect different aspects of humanity under pressure. Some seek truth, others revenge. Some chase lost loved ones, while others run from pasts they'd rather forget. But as they'll soon discover, Prehevel has its own plans for them. That sickly green moon watches their every move, and the Festival of Termina cares nothing for human motivations. In the coming days, they'll be forced to decide what matters more: survival or humanity, truth or sanity, fellowship or solitude. Their choices will shape not only their own fates, but perhaps the very nature of human consciousness itself. The train's steam has finally settled, and the first rays of morning light do nothing to dispel Prehevel's oppressive mist. It's time to choose which of these 8 stories will follow into the darkness. But remember, in the Festival of Termina, every choice has consequences, and even the strongest bonds can shatter under the moon's unblinking gaze.
Why heroin?
In Prehevel, divinity bleeds through the cracks of reality like water through a broken dam. To understand the Festival of Termina is to understand a cosmic game where gods move humans like pieces on a board, where faith is not a matter of belief but survival, and where the line between transcendence and destruction grows thinner with each passing hour. Above the city spires hangs Rare's grinning face, that sickly green moon that never sets, never blinks, never stops watching. The trickster moon god represents something primal in the divine hierarchy: jealousy. As one of the last old gods that seems to maintain an interest in human affairs, Rare's presence isn't born of love or hatred, but of a possessive need to keep humanity in its place. His Festival of Termina is both art and weapon, a cruel performance piece that transforms human ambition into horrific cautionary tales. Through the voice of Percale, Rare presents his festival as a simple game. Survive 3 days, be the last one standing, win your freedom. But there's a terrible irony in this promise of salvation. Those who embrace violence to survive often transform first, while those who maintain their humanity might face even worse fates. The rules are simple, but the game is rigged. Every choice leads deeper into Rare's labyrinth of consequences. At the heart of Rare's plan lies moon scorching, a grotesque transformation inflicted by the moon god upon those who fail to participate adequately in the festival. Those afflicted first experience severe burns and cracking skin, followed by unnatural growths and physical distortions. But the true horror of moon scorching goes beyond mere physical corruption. It manifests as a reflection of each victim's deepest fears, regrets, and suppressed nature. The process drives its victims to homicidal madness while warping them into forms that serve as dark mirrors of their inner selves. This mechanic creates both a narrative and gameplay tension. Every character, including your own, races against time before the moon's influence claims them. However, deep beneath Prehevel Street, humanity builds its own god. The Logic Project represents something unprecedented. Not prayer or sacrifice, but calculation and connection. In hidden bunkers lined with humming machines, engineers work to birth divinity from technology. Their goal isn't to worship the divine, but to become it, to transform humanity, not through individual ascension, but through collective transcendence. These underground facilities tell their own story through architecture. Steel replaces stone, electric hum replaces chanted prayer, flickering screens replace stained glass. Yet, even here, in these temples to human progress, old patterns emerge. Sacrifices are still made, though with circuits instead of blood. Prayers are still offered, though in binary code instead of ancient tongues. Between moon and machine moves the sulfur cult, born from divine darkness cast aside. Their presence in Prehevel predates the festival, their influence seeping through the city's foundations like a slow poison. In back alleys and hidden shrines, they perform rituals that mock both ancient faith and modern progress. Their agents, needles with his syringes full of transformation, stitches with her flesh-warping experiments, are artists of human corruption. The cultists see the festival not as a threat, but as an opportunity. In the chaos of Rare's game, they find cover for their own ceremonies. Each transformation they engineer is a step towards their true goal. Not merely the horror of individual mutation, but the transformation of reality itself. They seem to seek to restore an older world, one where the boundaries between human and divine were written in blood and madness, rather than doctrine and technology. Prelude itself becomes a living record of this divine conflict. Its architecture is a language of competing powers. The further one strays from the central tower, the more the old ways hold sway. Yet even in the heart of modernity, ancient powers seep through. A department store becomes a temple to transformation. A jazz club hosts rituals in its basement. A train station transforms from escape route to prison. Into this divine battleground step 14 humans, each carrying their own weight of purposes and pain. They arrive believing their personal quests for truth, for redemption, for revenge, are what drive them. None suspect they're threads in a tapestry woven by competing gods, their choices already shaped by powers beyond comprehension. Yet perhaps this is where true transcendence lies, not in the grand schemes of gods old and new, but in the small moments of human choice. When a boxer helps a botanist find her sister despite knowing only one can survive, when a journalist chooses truth over safety, when an occultist faced the very powers she once worshipped. These choices, made in defiance of divine manipulation, might matter more than all the cosmic machinations above. For in Prelude, under that watching moon, between machine god and ancient cult, 14 humans will discover that the divine stage has room for more than just gods and their pawns. Sometimes in the space between survival and transcendence, between faith and technology, between horror and hope, there is room for something else entirely, something purely, terribly, beautifully human. The Festival of Termina begins with a dream, or perhaps more accurately, a shared nightmare. 14 strangers, scattered throughout a train's carriages, experience the same vision. First a strange girl, then a strange journey through a workshop, accompanied with brutal reprisal from inhuman-looking monstrosities, followed by a static-filled vision of a hall full of hulking figures sat in absolute silent contemplation, and then a seemingly never-ending tower, and a figure named Percole standing beneath a moon that seems to watch them with malicious intent. Its sickly green light bathes everything in an otherworldly glow, as Percole speaks of cosmic games and inevitable death. Some try to wake themselves, others attempt to question this strange herald, but all are drawn inexorably into the knowledge that they've become part of something terrible. They awake to find their train halted in dense mist, the city of Prelude looming unseen beyond the tree line. Steam rises from the wheels as if the great machine itself is exhausted, and the silence that greets them feels unnatural. No birds sing, no wind stirs the trees. It's in these first moments of confusion that characters reveal their true natures, their reactions to crisis setting the stages for all that follows. Stepping outside, we are met with many who have already awoken, and a barrage of questions and introductions follow. It is here where we learn that all the other passengers of the train experience the same vivid dream, and an accompanying visit from Rare and his seeming envoy. We learn that Pav, the Bremen lieutenant, who carries himself with the rigid posture of a military man, but his eyes betray something more volatile, his hand never leaving his holstered pistol as he strode away from the group, barely containing his eagerness to pursue a vendetta against the mysterious Kaiser. Every word he speaks drips with bitter purpose, his courtesy a thin veneer over burning revenge. The war may be over, but his personal battle is just beginning. But let me take a minute to explain the Bremen Empire and how it ties back to the Second Great War, with the war's victor being this Bremen Empire, this world's equivalent of Nazi Germany, led by a mysterious figure known only as the Kaiser. The Bremen's empire conquest ended differently than our Second World War. After launching an all-out offensive to seize the nation of Bohemia from the Eastern Union, the Kaiser unexpectedly signed a peace treaty in 1942. His armies immediately occupied the Bohemian city of Prelude, where our story takes place. But the Kaiser wasn't after territory. He was after something hidden beneath the city's streets. But that is for much later. First, back to the contestants, as Karen Sawyer's journalistic instincts kick in immediately. Her camera becomes both weapon and shield as she documents everything, questioning each passenger about Bremen military involvement. Her theories about experimental weapon and civilian testing stem from experience. She's seen the Empire's cruelty firsthand and recognizes its patterns. Yet, even her hardened skepticism can't fully rationalize the dream they all shared. In stark contrast to the others' panic and suspicion, Marina kneels quietly to draw ritual circles in the dirt. Her occult training recognizes signs the others miss, but her connection to Brahevel runs deeper than mere mysticism. Every line she draws seems to come from muscle memory, as if the city itself guides her hand. She knows these streets, these shadows, these ancient powers. She grew up in their embrace, and now she's returned to confront them. Inside the train's warm interior, an unlikely friendship forms between two souls seeking very different things. Marco, the boxer whose bandaged hands hint at recent violence, finds himself drawn into conversation with Olivia, the wheelchair-bound botanist whose scientific knowledge seems at odds with the supernatural dread enveloping them. Their discussion of shared dreams is marked by genuine warmth, a human connection that feels more precious with each passing hour. Both recognize something in the other, a desire to protect, to understand, to survive, not just physically, but morally. Tanaka, the businessman's nervous pacing provides counterpoint to their calm discussion. The Odin businessman's carefully planned schedule lies in ruins, his frantic checking of his pocket watch becoming almost comedic if it weren't so tragic. His insistence on maintaining formality, continuing to bow slightly when addressing others, apologizing for his anxiety, speaks to a man whose entire worldview is about to be shattered. Osa, the Yellow Mage, maintains his distance from these human dramas. He watches everything through eyes that have seen horrors the others can't imagine. His meditation poses a stark contrast to the growing tension. His silence feels heavy with purpose, though whether that purpose serves the group's salvation or damnation remains to be seen. Hope arrives in an unexpected form as Henrik, a chef whose professional demeanor seems oddly placed in this nightmare, offers to cook for the group. The simple gesture of humanity, the promise of a hot meal, of normalcy, feels like a lifeline. Yet even this kindness carries a terrible weight. To cook, he needs supplies from the mayor's manor, and for Brahevel, no journey is without its price. His departure marks the first splintering of the group, though far from the last. Leaving the confines of the train, there are two distinct paths that can be taken. One leading to the moon-scorched and devastated old town, full with people irrevocably changed by the green rays of the moon. But if you instead decide to head deeper into the woods, you will come across a bunker eventually, that serves as Termina's first encapsulation of atmosphere. It's these first hours that establish the rhythm of death that will define the festival. Deep beneath the forest's shadowy embrace, Abella's fate hangs by a thread. The redhead mechanic's investigation of strange machinery becomes a race against time. Each minute brings her closer to transformation, though she doesn't yet understand the significance of the ticking sound that seems to follow her through the darkness. Her technical expertise, so valuable in the world above, mean nothing against the cosmic forces stirring beneath Brahevel. Depending on which place had been reached first, either the mayor's manor or this bunker, Abella's fate can drastically change. You will either be met with the mutated form of Chaugnar, her moon-scorched form that will pursue you relentlessly throughout the bunker, serving as an omnipresent reminder of the corrupting embrace of the moon and the fragility of humanity in the festival of Termina. However, if this place is reached first, Abella can instead be spared from the fate that awaits her, instead having the option to join the player's party. However, if Abella is saved, then, of course, someone must be lost in her place. It is in these same tunnels, Tanaka's business-minded curiosity leads him into the domain of Needles, who takes the place of Chaugnar as the monstrosity that stalks these halls. The clown's appearance marks the game's first true descent into horror, his perpetual grin and methodical violence serving as a grotesque introduction to what Brahevel has become, as we watch as Tanaka is slowly but surely beheaded by the clown. Those who witnessed Tanaka's fate learn a crucial lesson about the nature of the festival. Hesitation kills, mercy is costly, and some horrors can't be undone. However, Tanaka did not die without a struggle, as he weakened Needles, likely being why the form that can be found within the tunnels is significantly easier to fight than the same version that can be found later. His sacrifice making Brahevel slightly safer for the rest of the contestants. But regardless of which is visited first, the bunker stands as an important first place to visit, housing one of the teleelectroscopes needed for one of the endings, alongside a key on a dead Bremen soldier, the Eagle brass key that's needed to proceed. However, it is important to note that Tanaka and Abella can both be saved. Abella by recruiting her before venturing to the mayor's manor, and Tanaka by not going too deep into the bunker, and instead coming back on day 2 for the items missed. If instead you had opted to head into the Old Town, it is most likely that you will end up at the Mayor's Manor, with the Old Town standing as a testament to Prehevel's class divisions, now made horrifically literal. The poorest district becomes ground zero for the Moonscorch phenomenon, its residents transformed into reflections of their social status. Citizens who were once human stumble through familiar streets, their bodies twisted by lunar radiation, into shapes that echo their earthly suffering. Here the game's themes of transformation take physical form. Every monster was once someone's neighbor, every horror has a human origin. The manor looms as a monument to faded authority, its windows dark with secrets. Here, Henrik's story can take 2 paths. Found in time, his culinary skills provide one of the game's few sources of true sustenance. His cooking becomes more than mere survival. It's a reminder of humanity in an increasingly inhuman situation. Finding him on the 2nd floor, pacing maniacally, talking to himself about a ticking clock that only he himself can hear. You can break him out of this stupor, which he will mention looking for the food supply, which can then be found in the basement. Informing him of this, he will return to the train and cook for everyone, adding a relatively easy way to manage hunger early on in Termina. Yet time is cruel in Prehevel, and those who arrive too late find something else entirely. If you would instead prioritize the bunker and Abella, then Henrik transforms into the gentleman, perverting his passion for hospitality into something monstrous. His dinner parties become pageants of horror, each course served with impeccable manners and unspeakable ingredients. The first victim of moonscorching has been taken. One thing to note about the gentleman is that, unlike many of the other moonscorch victims that the contestants can turn into, like Shaugna with Abella, the gentleman seems to retain significant humanity, making conversation and only becoming actively hostile if he is disrespected, or if you show sympathies to the Bremen military. Whilst most Moonscorch act as amplifications of people's own innermost regrets and fears about themselves, but instead Henrik's innermost self seems to be someone who comes across as reasonable and personable, an interesting side of Rez's corrupting embrace. The remnants of Bremen military presence raise more questions than answers. Abandoned barricades and empty guard posts suggest even armed forces couldn't contain what was unleashed here. The soldiers who remain have been touched by the same forces that affects the civilians, their military discipline perverted into mechanical brutality. It's in these streets that Levi confronts ghosts of his own past. The young deserter recognizes places from his childhood, the orphanage where his mother died, the alleyways where he learned to survive. But Caligora, the mobster with a permanent grin, has marked this territory as his hunting ground. Their game of cat and mouse through narrow streets demonstrates how the festival twists even simple survival into psychological torture. Every shadow could hide a killer. Every moment of rest could be interrupted by violence. Every decision to help another contestant could lead to betrayal. This leads to a violent confrontation between the two that will inevitably lead to the death of Levi, if not intervened in, leading to the death of Caligora, the mobster being easily the most violent and depraved of all the Termina contestants, the knight concealing his true nature. Similarly, this same confrontation can play out between Henrik and Caligora, providing Henrik hasn't transformed, resulting once more in Henrik's untimely demise if not intervened with in time. In between all of this, the Prehevel Bob Jazz Club emerges as an unlikely sanctuary in this maelstrom of horror. Its neon signs still buzz fitfully in the growing darkness. The sound of recorded music drifts through boarded windows. Below ground, in a hidden speakeasy that once served the resistance, survivors can almost pretend the world above doesn't exist. Daan, if he's found his way here, might even mix drinks at the bar, each carefully crafted cocktail a small act of defiance against the chaos. But even here, the music occasionally skips, and in those moments of silence, everyone hears the scratching from the walls getting closer. Meanwhile, August moves across the city rooftops with inhuman grace, his ancient eyes seeing patterns of his miss. He watches Pav's dogged pursuit of the Kaiser, observes Marina's occult investigation, notes how Osa's movements seem to follow some predetermined path. His own agenda remains unclear, but his presence serves as a reminder that some horrors in Prehevel predate even the festival's beginning. Among Termina's many interwoven narratives, few better exemplify its themes of transformation and devotion than the triangle of tragedy between Marina, her father, Father Domek, and the mysterious Saber. Their story serves as a microcosm of how personal horror and cosmic forces intersect in Prelude, where family bonds twist as easily as flesh, and devotion becomes a doorway to destruction. Marina's origin story challenges conventional horror tropes. Born in Prelude's Church of Olmer to the city's leading dark priest, her path seemed predetermined, until her mother made a choice that would ripple through multiple lives. To spare her child from the cruel destiny of dark priesthood, she raised Marina as a girl. This wasn't merely deception, it was salvation. Marina would later maintain this identity by choice, finding truth in what began as protection. But shadows linger in holy places. Father Domek's position as Prelude's spiritual leader masked a man whose devotion to ancient rites superseded all human connection. The Church of Olmer, under his guidance, maintained its public face while practicing darker traditions in secret. Marina's escape to study occultism at the Vatican wasn't just education. It was exile, chosen over suffocation under her father's orthodoxy. Here enters Saber, herself a product of religious extremism, kept in isolation with other gifted children in the Vatican's deepest circle. She first glimpsed Marina through the bars of her metaphorical cage. What began as an observation evolved into obsession. In Marina, Saber saw something both forbidden and free. Everything she couldn't be. This fixation would eventually draw her to follow Marina back to Prelude, though Marina remained unaware of her shadow. This led to an inevitable confrontation between Saber and Father Domek in the Church of Olmer, and it serves as a pivotal moment where personal and cosmic violence collide. Their clash isn't just between individuals, it's between different forms of devotion. Father Domek's rigid adherence to tradition meets Saber's obsessive protection of Marina. Saber, believing that Marina hates her father and wishing to help her, unleashes her pent-up rage on the priest. The result is both mundane and mysterious. 5 knife wounds end the dark priest's life. Saber's flight to the church basement following this act mirrors Marina's early escape, both women running from patriarchal power, both seeking refuge in darkness. But where Marina found freedom in her exile, Saber remains bound by her obsession, as the moon's twisting embrace transforms her into something that reflects her innermost regrets and fears: dysmorphia. However, the fight against dysmorphia seems to be a fight against the true form of something. Gone is the timid and stunted girl that Saber was before. This new version of her seems to be confident and assured. Taking her down seems less of a mercy, and more of a cruelty. This dynamic reflects Termina's larger themes about the nature of transformation. Marina's identity emerges from protection transformed into truth, whereas Saber's admiration transforms into dangerous devotion. Each character undergoes changes both chosen and forced, mirroring the broader transformations plaguing Prelude under the moon's gaze. The Church of Olmer looms over their story like the tower it inhabits, its influence reaching into the most intimate aspects of human connection. The architecture itself tells their story. Family quarters overshadowed by religious grandeur, secret basements holding darker truths than the ceremonies above, confessional booths where sins are shared but never truly absolved. As night fully descends, the grinning moon's light takes on an almost solid quality. It pools in doorways and drips down walls, leaving faintly luminescent trails that some swear spell out words in languages better left unread. The first day ends with survivors gathering in whatever safety they can find. The train, the jazz club, hidden rooms in abandoned buildings. They count their ammunition, tend their wounds, and try not to think about how every hour brings them closer to transformation. In the distance, something that might have once been Henrique rings a dinner bell, and hungry things answer its call. Dawn breaks over Prelude like a fever. The morning fog carries the metallic scent of blood and something else. Something green and sick that seems to pulse with the watching moon's heartbeat. Those who survived the first night have changed already. Not in body, not yet, but in the eyes. You can see it in how they look at each other in the train's dim light. The weight of knowing that friendship and betrayal now wear the same face. In the quiet of early morning, Marco makes a choice that will echo through the day's coming horrors. The boxer, who has spent his life solving problems with his fists, decides on an act of pure compassion. He's seen Olivia struggling with her broken wheelchair, seen how the city's cruel architecture conspires against her mobility. Despite knowing the festival's rules, despite understanding that kindness today might become tomorrow's weapon, he sets out alone to find her a new chair. However, this simple mercy collides with Pav's desperation near the city gates. The Bremen lieutenant, haunted by memories of his homeland's destruction, has been waiting since dawn. His fingers tap an anxious rhythm on his pistol as he watches for the Kaiser. When he sees Marco's military bearing, something breaks. Old wars birth new violence, and without intervention, the morning air cracks with gunfire. Marco falls, his boxer's reflexes too slow against bullets. His body cools in the street, while the wheelchair he found sits empty. A monument to kindness punished, provided no one manages to intervene in due course. In the western districts, Karin's camera captures the city's decay in stark black and white. Each photograph reveals another layer of Prehivel's secrets. The hastily built military barricades, the strange antenna arrays dubbed tele-electroscopes, the underground bunkers that seem to pulse with electronic life. Her journalist's instincts tell her these aren't just remnants of occupation. The Bremen Empire didn't want Prehivel. They wanted something underneath it, something that makes the very air crackle with potential. She searches faces in a viewfinder, documenting the city's descent, knowing that each subject might be transformed by morning. But it's what Karin finds in a derelict apartment that truly shakes her professional detachment. A television set flickers to life in the darkness, and from its screen, she watches herself, or something wearing her face, delivering a news report about a series of murders in Prehivel. The broadcast is perfect, down to her signature cadence and mannerisms. But it's impossible. She's never filed this report, never stood before those cameras, never investigated these specific crimes. Yet here she is, her doppelganger, discussing horrors as if she'd been the city's resident journalist for months. The implications chill her more than any photograph could. How long has this other Karin been operating in the city? What other duplicates might be walking Prehivel streets, living lives stolen from their originals? Her camera suddenly feels inadequate. How can you document truth in a place where even identity itself is suspect? The broadcast continues its impossible report, each word from her double's mouth adding another crack to her understanding of reality. She's been approaching Prehivel like any other war-torn city, searching for concrete evidence of Bremen atrocities. But some stories can't be captured on film. Some truths resist documentation. In Prehivel, even the journalist herself has become part of the story, replicated and twisted by forces that care nothing for objectivity or fact. Osa moves through these events like a man reading a script he helped write. The Yellow Mage's conversations with his beheaded masters reveal fragments of greater purpose, hints that the festival is more than just divine sport, that logic's birth might mean more than even its creators suspect. In his wake, the city's occult underpinnings rise closer to the surface, revealing patterns in the chaos that only he seems to fully grasp. As afternoon bleeds into evening, the first true transformations begin. Those who witnessed Henrique become the gentleman now understand their own fate. Every moon-scorched being is a dark mirror, reflecting the inner torture of the human it once was. The day's terrible crescendo comes with the Kaiser's arrival. He moves through Prehivel like a wound in reality, each step leaving the air a little colder, a little greener. The man who led the Bremen Empire to victory is something colder, something that walked in human skin long before this war, before any war. His true nature splits the evening like lightning, and in that flash, the threads connecting Prehivel's mysteries begin to shine. He moves through Prehivel as though the city itself recoils from his presence, each footstep leaving frost in its wake despite the summer air. The soldiers accompanying him, not quite human anymore. Their gas masks fuse to faces that might not exist beneath, form a grotesque honor guard. Their boots strike the cobblestone in perfect unison, a martial rhythm that sounds more like a funeral dirge than a march. This is not the Kaiser who appears in propaganda posters, not the strong-jawed leader who united the Bremen Empire through force of will and military might. Something far older walks these streets, wearing human skin like an ill-fitting uniform. Those who look too long at him begin to see what might be there. Glimpses of ancient armor beneath his modern uniform, shadows of wings that shouldn't exist, the suggestion of a crown made of materials that have no name in any human tongue. It is here where Pav's moment arrives like destiny, seizing the opportunity whilst he is distracted. The lieutenant, whose entire life has been building to this assassination attempts, steps out from the shadows with a gun that suddenly seems absurdly inadequate. His shots ring out perfect and true, the product of years of training, of hatred refined into lethal precision. Each bullet finds its mark, and each bullet means nothing. The Kaiser turns and regards Pav with something that might be amusement, might be pity. His movement is impossible, liquidly smooth, yet mechanically precise, as he closes the distance. Those who understand what happened next will carry the images to their graves. How a man can be unmade by hands that aren't quite hands anymore, how screams can catch in a throat that's being reshaped by forces beyond comprehension. The encounter reveals truths that some contestants are already piecing together. The Kaiser's interest in Prehevel isn't mere territorial expansion. The bunkers beneath the city, the strange machines, the project known only as logic. All of it connects to something older than the Bremen Empire, older than Empire itself. The Kaiser isn't here to conquer, he's here to witness an ascension, or perhaps to prevent one. It is below these corrupted streets that the Kaiser makes his way to, below the doomed town, below the crazed inhabitant and those participants vaguely clinging to some semblance of humanity, that the Kaiser makes his way to, entering the bunkers that lay below the streets, and simply waiting. It is here where the party can find this mystical figure, sitting and waiting. And above it all, that watching moon seems to grin wider, its green light falling like poison on streets that will soon host even greater horrors. The festival's second night approaches, and with it the promise of more transformations, more revelations, more moments when the thin skin of reality tears to reveal the impossible truths writhing beneath. As day bleeds into dusk, Prehevel Bop continues as a sanctuary of sorts. Behind its heavy doors, Daan tends the bar like a man trying to postpone the apocalypse, mixing drinks that help his fellow contestants forget how time is running out. The jazz music drifting down to the speakeasy below feels like a remembrance of humanity, rather than its celebration. In dark corners, alliances form and break. Karin and Abella whisper about resistance movements, while Osa sits alone, the beheaded wizard, counseling him about truths too terrible to share. Having nearly succumbed from his wounds attempting to assassinate the Kaiser, Pav is brought back to the train, a mere bandage being the only thing separating him from the embrace of the void. His attempts at revenge had failed, his gun failing to scratch the centuries of experience the Kaiser possesses, as he is left to stew in contemplation and agony on the train. Across the city, the white mold apartments tell their own story as night falls. A refuge and seeming ritual place for the cultists of the Sulphur God. A sigil belonging to this mysterious entity can be found alongside a diary that belonged to a cultist of Sulphur who committed a mass murder in these halls long ago. It is here where you can find Daan, sitting in a room alone on the second floor, occupied entirely by himself and a sigil. It is here where he can either be left alone or recruited into the party, adding significant combat prowess through his medicinal abilities. However, if you choose to leave him, then the embrace of the moon takes over, prompting him to give in to the voice that had been following him all his life, that of the child-stealing pocket cat. His journey for answers in Prehevel having turned up nothing but placing his life in danger, he gives into the deceptive whispers of the moon and embraces his new pocket cat identity, hopefully receiving some form of answers. Apart from Daan, the White Mold apartments also can hold a tragic fate for Tanaka and Marco, assuming they survived both the encounter with Pav and Tanaka the bunker. They journey into the building in search of supplies. The moon-scorched phenomenon, however, proves to be too much for Marco, as he transforms and twists into the Giant, an amalgamation of violence and brutality. However, he manages to get away before it overtakes him, leaving Tanaka alone in the apartments. He can be found after this, preparing and getting ready to avenge Marco, his one friend in this accursed city. Fear becoming determination, in a world that seems determined to beat down any semblance of hope. Among Termina's interwoven tragedies, Daan's story stands as perhaps its most psychologically devastating. What begins as a search for answers about his wife's death become a nightmarish reunion with the twisted remains of his family, all while an ancient entity circles him like a predator sizing up its next incarnation. The roots of Daan's tragedy lie in his marriage into the von Dutch family. Baron Fina von Dutch, his father-in-law, was a doctor whose unconventional healing methods masked an obsession with the old gods. He took Daan as an apprentice, offering modern medical knowledge in exchange for Daan's understanding of Sylvian, the goddess of healing. This exchange seemed innocent enough at first, a marriage of modern medicine and ancient wisdom, yet it marked the beginning of a descent into darkness that would consume the entire family. Daan's relationship with his wife Elise offered temporary refuge from the Baron's growing religious fervour. Their love story played out against the backdrop of the Second Great War, a pocket of warmth in cold times. Yet even this happiness proved fleeting. When Daan returned home one day, he found the von Dutch manor overtaken by the occult. In the basement, a grotesque ritual to the sulphur god had claimed both his wife and father-in-law. His subsequent attempts to resurrect Elise, sacrificing his left eye in a desperate ritual, mark him as a man willing to dabble in the very forces that destroyed his family. This tragic irony follows him to Prelude, where the past he fled now wears new horrific faces. The first sign comes in his encounter with Needles, the permanently grinning torturer who haunts the underground tunnels. Despite the clown-like appearance, something in Needles' manner strikes Daan as horrifyingly familiar. The way he moves, his understanding of anatomy, his methodical approach to inflicting pain, all echo the Baron's surgical precision. When their eyes meet in combat, there's a moment of recognition that chills Daan to his core. His father-in-law's medical brilliance has been twisted into something monstrous, yet retains enough of its original character to be recognizable. Even more disturbing, however, is his encounter with Stitches in Tunnel 1. The woman with a sewn-shut mouth and self-inflicted wound bears an impossible resemblance to Elise. Her presence there, working alongside the creature that might once have been her father, suggests a perversion of family bonds that cuts deeper than mere physical horror. The intimate violence of her sewn wounds seems to mock Daan's failed attempt to stitch his family back together through resurrection. But perhaps the most insidious threat to Daan comes from Pocket Cat, the ancient servant of Rare who takes a special interest in him throughout the festival. Their encounters carry a weight of inevitability, as if Pocket Cat recognizes something in Daan that marks him as a suitable vessel. The entity's playful manner and formal speech provides a grotesque mirror to the aristocratic life Daan once lived with the von Dutch family. Every interaction suggests that Daan's past suffering has groomed him for a particular kind of transformation. The psychological pressure builds as Daan navigates Prelude. Every medical procedure he performs recalls lessons learned from the Baron. Every wound he treats reminds him of his failure to save Elise. The very act of helping others becomes coloured by the knowledge that his mentor's healing knowledge was perverted into torture, his wife's love twisted into self-mutilation. Should Daan succumb to the Moonscorch, his transformation into a new incarnation of Pocket Cat represents a cruel culmination of his journey. His suffering, his medical knowledge, his aristocratic manners all become perfect components for this ancient entity's newest form. Even his past trauma serves a purpose, having hollowed him out just enough to make room for something else to move in. What makes Daan's story particularly haunting is how it suggests that some fates are shaped long before we recognize their approach. His apprenticeship under the Baron, his marriage to Elise, his dabbling in resurrection, each step led him closer to Prelude and its horrors. Even his attempts to flee his past only brought him closer to its transformed versions. At the heart of Termina's cosmic horror lies an intimately human story, a sister searching for her twin. Olivia's journey to Prelude isn't just another contestant's tale, it's a desperate attempt to uncover what happened to Relia, whose disappearance hints at something far more sinister than mere imprisonment. The sisters' story begins in their oppressively religious household. Born at midnight at the cusp of the month, they received different birth signs. Olivia's soul was shadowed, while Relia's was radiating. This duality would come to define their relationships and futures. Whilst both excelled academically, they pursued radically different paths. Olivia immersed herself in botany and natural sciences, while Relia drove into engineering and New Age technology. Their divergence deepened after Olivia's health crisis, when she experienced several strokes at 15. Their parents sought help from religious healers rather than modern medicine. It was Relia who fought for her sister to receive proper medical treatment. but by then it was too late to prevent Olivia's dependence on a wheelchair. This experience shaped both sisters profoundly. Olivia developed a complicated relationship with disability and faith, while Relia became driven to push the boundaries of science, perhaps partly motivated by her inability to help her sister in time. The sisters remained close even as their paths diverged further. Both enrolled at the same university in Bremen, finally free from their parents' religious control. While Olivia studied botany, Relia's brilliant mind earned her a place in Operation Eingeist, and later an exchange program between the Bremen Empire and the Eastern Union. Her letters to Olivia spoke of groundbreaking work and exciting discoveries. Then, the letters stopped. The official story was that Relia had been arrested for treason, imprisoned in East Bremen State Prison. But even after her reported escape with help from the nameless Liberty Underground, the truth remained elusive. Her final letter to Olivia contained cryptic references to a cube, and warnings about the Kaiser's interest in the operation in Prahival. Throughout the game, Olivia's search for answers leads her deeper into Prahival's mysteries. The city itself seems to hold echoes of Relia, in the advanced technology hidden beneath its streets, in the whispers of secret projects, in the strange dreams that plague the contestants. Each clue suggests that Relia's disappearance is tied to something far larger than political intrigue. There's a tragic irony in how the sisters' path continues to mirror and diverge in Prahival. While Olivia fights to maintain her humanity amid the festival's horrors, evidence suggests Rila pursued a different kind of transcendence through technology. Their parallel journeys through the city reflect their lifelong pattern, two sisters taking different approaches to overcome human limitations. The relationship between the sisters adds deeper resonance to many of Prahival's locations. The underground bunkers filled with mysterious technology feel more ominous when viewed through Olivia's eyes. Could her sister have worked here? The Church of Ulmer's oppressive architecture recalls their childhood religious trauma. Even the moonlit streets echo with the absence of someone who should be there. Down in the tunnels beneath the city, the true purpose of Prahival begins to reveal itself. The tele-electric scopes hum with impossible energy, each one drawing power not just from electricity, but from something older, something that tastes like the green hue of that watching moon. Those who understand their purpose, perhaps Osa with his occult knowledge, or Abella with her mechanical insight, begin to grasp the terrifying scope of Project Logic. The night brings out Prahival's most twisted children. Needles stalks the corridors of power, his surgical precision now turned to torture. Stitches haunts the underground, her sewn-shut mouth holding screams that echo through the tunnels. They serve something older than the festival, older perhaps than the city itself. The sulfur god's influence seeping through reality's cracks. It's during these dark hours that the depths of Percules' deception begins to surface. The servant of the moon god is no servant at all, but a cultist playing a longer game. The festival itself becomes clearer. Not just a game of survival, but a ritual of transformation. Each death, each moon scorching feeds power to forces that have waited centuries for this moment. If you activate all three of the tele-electroscopes that lie around the bunkers underneath Prahival, bringing online forces that we don't truly understand, turning the entire city into one crisscrossed information nexus, we gain entrance to the White Bunker, the bunker that holds not only the Kaiser, but also an effort to replace God with something truly human. A project that, like the god of fear and hunger before it, hopes to bring humanity into a new age. A kind age that promises the end of suffering. We journey deep beneath Prahival, past the endless cable bridges spanning impossible distances, through corridors that seem to bend reality itself. We face the horrors of the platoon, and the accompanying Sylvian soldier, that leaves physical and mental scars that will never truly heal. But a place lies even past this, a void room that strikes at something deeper than flesh or sanity. The room exists in a space that shouldn't be, a pocket of nothingness carved out between dimensions. Here sits the Kaiser, the man who drove the Bremen Empire to victory, who sparked the Great War that reshaped Europa, who caused untold suffering in his march towards divinity. But in this moment, he appears almost peaceful. There's a resignation in his posture that speaks of ancient weariness. But out of the shadows comes someone who has had his eyes on the Kaiser since entering the city on that accursed train. Someone whose entire lineage, entire sense of self, hinges on taking revenge. August. He raises his bow and looses 3 arrows in quick succession, knowing better than most to not allow the inhuman form the chance to retaliate. But alas, the Kaiser stands as a force insurmountable, at least to only a singular man, as August collapses after a mere retaliative strike from the Kaiser, dead. Nearing midnight, those who witness the Kaiser's true nature understand at last why Pav and August's revenge was always doomed. The man who led the Bremen Empire to victory is Lagarde reborn, a figure out of ancient prophecy, now pursuing technological apotheosis. His interest in Project Logic isn't just mere military strategy, it's the culmination of centuries of planning, another attempt to reshape humanity in his image. His words carry the weight of centuries. He speaks of arriving too late, of wheels already in motion, of a transformation that can no longer be stopped. Project Logic, he reveals, was never merely about communication or technology. The bunkers beneath Prehevel, with their mysterious machines and impossible geometrics, were built to birth a god. The Eastern Union scientists, in their quest to replicate the cube of the depths, had stumbled upon something far more profound, a way to elevate humanity itself through technology. The truth unfolds like a flower made of razor blades. Relia Haas, Olivia's missing sister, had reached the bunker first. Even now, deep in the facility's heart, she undergoes a metamorphosis that will transform her into the machine god, a being capable of connecting all human consciousness into a single network. The very architecture of the White Bunker bends around this cosmic event, its massive underground structures serving as a cradle for this technologically divine birth. Kaiser's revelation comes as a bitter irony. All his campaigns, all the lives sacrificed in the Bremen's empire push for Bohemia, all the strings pulled to seize control of Prehevel, all of it was in service of this moment. But the nameless Liberty Underground, working in shadows and silence, had outmaneuvered him. Their agent had claimed the godhood he sought, leaving him only one final role to play. When he stands to fight, it's not with the rage of a tyrant denied his prize. There's something almost gentle in his acceptance of this duty. He will guard this threshold, protect the nascent god during her vulnerable transformation, not because he desires it, but because he finally understands his place in the greater pattern. His declaration of battle carries the tone of ritual, of necessity rather than malice. But his power is no less terrible for its resignation. As the battle begins, the Void Room itself seems to respond to his presence. Ancient might mixing with traces of divinity he's gathered over centuries of walking in human skin. In this moment, he is both less and more than the Kaiser who led armies. He is a fragment of older stories, of greater conflicts, choosing to spend his last moments as a guardian rather than conqueror. The battle that follows isn't just for survival. It's for the right to witness divinity's rebirth. As the Kaiser melts away into nothingness, the chamber falls silent, save for the steady hum of machinery. What stands before you now defies conventional horror. Logic, the machine god, isn't a monster to be slain, or a deity demanding worship. She is the next step in human evolution, suspended in a mechanical shell that pulses with artificial life. Within that shell is Relia, or what remains of her humanity. Engineer, sister, visionary, now vessel for something far greater. The shell opens like a metal flower blooming, and from within pours that familiar yet wrong green light. The same hue that birthed the old gods, but recreated through human ingenuity. It's not just the light, it's potential made manifest, the space between human consciousness and divine understanding. What follows is a fleeting fight against this incumbent deity, flailing against the form of the machine. Here stands Relia Audrey Haas, or what remains of her. The brilliant engineer has become Logic's vessel, her body fused with wires and circuitry in a grotesque marriage of flesh and technology. Her transformation represents humanity's attempt to birth a new kind of god, one born not of ancient ritual or cosmic horror, but of human ingenuity and electronic advancement. The battle against logic is unlike any impreheval. The being before you is neither fully machine nor fully human, but something new. A prototype deity, trapped between states of existence. Cables pulse with impossible life, screens flicker with encrypted prophecies, and the air itself hums with electric potential. This is no mere fight. It's humanity's first confrontation with its technological future, its attempt to replace the old gods with something of our own creation. As Logic's shell finally cracks open, it reveals not blood or circuitry, but a brilliant green hue, the same primordial substance from which the old gods emerged. Beyond this final threshold lies the digital dreamscape, where consciousness itself devolves into data, and human identity faces its ultimate test of transformation. What follows isn't combat in any traditional sense. As your character falls through this digital dreamscape, reality itself begins to soften. Messages float through your consciousness, each one a gentle erosion of individual identity. Warmth surrounds your body. Your pain, your fear, your trauma, all begin to fade. It feels like you're floating in nothingness. The boundaries between self and other grow unclear. Empathy and hope fill you from inside out. You feel every joy, every sorrow, every dream of every person connected to Logic's network. You've gone through enough. Now you can rest. The weight of individual existence begins to lift. Just close your eyes and let the warm waves wash you away. Individual consciousness dissolves into something greater. The final vision is both beautiful and terrible. Countless human forms stacked upon each other, every mind that has joined the network, every consciousness merged into one vast ocean of shared experience. This is Logic's true form. Not a single entity, but the death of singularity itself. A god born not of cosmic power, but of human connection pushed to its ultimate conclusion. Each character brings their own tragedy to this moment. For Olivia, it's finding her sister only to lose her to transcendence, offered the chance to be together forever, in the most literal and cosmic sense. The sisters' reunion in the Logic ending is perhaps the game's most poignant moment. When Relia, now speaking as Logic, offers Olivia a place in the new collective consciousness, it's both an invitation and an echo of their childhood closeness. "Join me," the machine god says. "I found the way for us to always be together." The line carries multiple meanings: sisterly love, technological transcendence, and the erasure of individual identity. This relationship adds deeper meaning to Olivia's possible endings. In the Logic ending, she accepts her sister's invitation, joining the collective consciousness. In her Survivor ending, she feels Relia's spirit following her on her botanical expeditions, suggesting that their bond transcends even godhood. These endings suggest that while their paths diverge dramatically, their connection remains unbroken. The sisters' story encapsulates Termina's largest themes. Their different responses to disability and religion reflect the game's exploration of faith and human limitation. Relia's transformation into Logic represents humanity's technological ascension, while Olivia's journey shows the power of human resilience. The relationships demonstrates how personal bonds persist even when cosmic forces threaten to tear them apart. More powerfully, their story shows how Termina's horror is anchored in human relationships. The machine god isn't just a technological deity. She's someone's sister. The Festival of Termina isn't just a divine game. It's what keeps two sisters apart. By grounding its largest themes in this intimate relationship, the game makes its cosmic horror more affecting and its human elements more poignant. Even after Relia's transformation, traces of sisterly love remain. Logic's ending isn't presented as purely horrific, but contains a genuine desire for connection. Similarly, Olivia's Survivor ending suggests that some bonds transcend even godhood. Their story suggests that while forces beyond human comprehension may change us, they cannot fully erase the connections that make us human. This personal narrative thread, running through Termina's horror, shows how the game operates on multiple levels simultaneously. Behind the moon-scorched transformation and divine politics, there's a story about two sisters whose paths diverge, but whose bond endures. It's this human element that makes the game's larger themes resonate so powerfully. The machine god ending isn't just an ending, it's a question. Is this humanity's salvation, or its ultimate surrender? Is the death of loneliness worth the death of individual experience? The remaining contestants might survive physically by returning to the train, but we're left to wonder if survival outside Logic's network is just prolonging the inevitable. Perhaps this is what Rare feared all along. Not that humanity would ascend to godhood, but that it would create a divinity that renders the very concept of individual gods obsolete. The festival wasn't just a game of survival, it was the last gasp of old divinity before technology rendered it obsolete. In the end, logic offers what no other god in this universe has: the end of human suffering through the end of human separation. It's both the most hopeful and most terrifying ending possible. There will be no more fear, no more hunger, no more loneliness. But there will also be no more you. There's a terrible poetry in surviving the Festival of Termina. As the sun rises on what would have been the fourth day, you stand alone in a city of ghosts and monsters. This isn't victory, it's endurance. Every other contestant has either died or succumbed to Moonscorch, their humanity twisted into grotesque reflections of their inner struggles. The transformations themselves tell stories of human nature under pressure. Marina becomes Shaugnar, an elephant-headed monstrosity in overalls, her fear of masculine identity being imposed upon her made manifest in flesh. Daan transforms into another incarnation of Pocket Cat, his trauma making him a vessel for the very entity that preys on suffering. Marco becomes Giant, his boxer's strength twisted into mindless rage, still wearing his combat jacket like a remnant of lost control. Karin mutates into Valkyrie, her self-image as a chronicler of war's horrors perverted into a vulture-like being that feeds on conflict. The path to this ending requires a particular kind of resolve. Every interaction with another contestant carries the weight of future necessity. Will you kill them now, while they're still human, or face their monstrous forms later? The game never judges these choices, but it makes sure you feel their weight. What follows after survival is equally poignant. Each playable character's epilogue reveals the true cost of enduring the festival. Levi becomes a perpetual wanderer, moving from city to city as nightmares follow him. He never stays in one place long enough for the past to catch up, but it travels with him anyway. Marina finds a home in Valan's red light district, among others who carry darkness within them. She uses some of her occult skills to survive, but is haunted by a mysterious figure, always trying to befriend her. A ghost of connections lost. Abella turns her trauma into ambition, rising through the ranks of space technology development. Her drive to reach the moon isn't just about progress, it's about confronting the entity that changed her life forever. Olivia gains confidence from her survival, but feels her sister's presence constantly. Her botanical studies take her to remote locations where nature itself seems to accommodate her wheelchair, as if the world recognizes her right to exist in it. Osa returns to Abyssonia to impose his own teachings, replacing existing religious structures with his vision. His survival of the festival becomes proof of his philosophies. Daan never finds closure about his wife's death. The cat's footsteps follow him in darkness, offering transformation as an escape from his guilt. Karin becomes obsessed with exposing the truth, digging deeper into conspiracies that might shatter her sanity before she can reveal them. Marco opens a boxing gym in Rondon, teaching others to defend themselves against both mundane and supernatural threats. His guilt at taking lives becomes a drive to save them instead. This ending suggests that survival itself isn't the victory. It's what we choose to do with survival that matters. Each character's response to their trauma reflects different aspects of human resilience. Running from it, embracing it, transforming it into purpose, or using it to help others. However, there's a third path through Brahevel's nightmare, one that reveals the Festival of Termina itself to be an elaborate deception. When you finally reach Perkele in the Hollow Tower, he offers a truth more terrible than the festival itself. Rare, the moon god, departed this world long ago. What looms above is merely his trace, his leftover divinity manipulated by those serving an older, darker power. The Sulphur God's path is reached through understanding rather than victory. You must piece together the divine puzzle, the clay figures scattered throughout Rare's realms, the truth about Olmer's ascension, how divinity itself splits and fractured when forced into human form. Olmer cast off his darkness to achieve godhood, but that darkness didn't disappear. It coalesced in the sulfur pits, becoming an entity of pure corruption that now works through human agents to restore the old world order. Percolé himself embodies this corruption. Once a mortal who survived a previous festival of Termina, he speaks of that experience as his true birth. His followers, Needles, who recalls Daan's father-in-law, and Stitches, who wears Daan's wife's face, aren't just cultists, but perversions of human connection itself. They use Rare's abandoned power to transform festival participants into potential recruits for their sulfuric rebirth. To witness Fear and Hunger 2, Termina's darkest ending, one must fully embrace the festival's bloody purpose. Every single contestant must die by your hand, or through your manipulation of events. No survivors, no mercy, no one left to Moonscorch. Each death brings you closer to understanding Percolé's true nature, and the ancient power he really serves. This means orchestrating the deaths of even the most sympathetic characters. Watching Marco teach Tanaka to box at the train, knowing you'll have to kill them both. Seeing Olivia's gratitude when someone finds her a new wheelchair, understanding it's a kindness that must be repaid with cruelty. The game forces you to actively reject every moment of human connection, every possibility of mercy. Only then, when you've proven yourself worthy through complete dedication to violence, does Percolé reveal his true allegiance. The Festival of Termina isn't really about Rare at all. It's about finding worthy initiates for the Sulfur Cult, those willing to fully embrace individual chaos over collective harmony. The choice presented is profound. Embrace this ancient chaos, this primal force that predates human consciousness, where logic offers transcendence through unity. The Sulfur God promises liberation through absolute individualism. No morality, no constraints, no need to pretend at being human. Each character brings their own terrible context to this choice. Marina sees it as the dark truth behind her father's religious devotion, not just corruption of faith, but faith in corruption itself. Osa recognizes it as the force that his yellow magic has always flirted with, pure self-interest elevated to cosmic principle. Olivia confronts it as the antithesis of her scientific understanding, chaos that refuses to be catalogued or understood. Levi finds in it an explanation for human cruelty that goes deeper than war or politics. Abella sees technology's ultimate futility against forces that predate human invention. Daan discovers that his personal tragedy was always part of something larger and more terrible. Karen learns that some truths destroy those who understand them. Marco faces an enemy that can't be fought because it exists in the spaces between human comprehension. The ritual of joining involves being reborn in the sulfur pits, but this isn't just physical transformation. It's the acceptance that humanity itself is a pretense, that our attempts at civilization, connection, and progress are elaborate lies we tell ourselves to avoid facing the chaos at reality's core. What makes this ending particularly haunting is how it reframes everything that came before. The old gods didn't leave our world. They were driven out by human consciousness itself, by our need to impose order and meaning. Olmer's ascension wasn't a victory, but a defeat, creating an entity of pure corruption that better reflects reality's true nature. Even logic's technological transcendence appears naive, an attempt to impose ultimate order on a universe that fundamentally rejects it. Those who choose this path don't just survive the Festival of Termina, they understand it as the sham that it always was. The real game wasn't about survival or transcendence, but about recognizing that both are impossible. There is only the chaos that existed before humanity, and will exist after it, waiting in sulfur pits and forgotten temples for those brave or broken enough to embrace it. In this light, the Moonscorch itself becomes almost mercy, a way for humanity to shed its pretenses and reveal the monsters we've always been. The Sulfur God doesn't transform us, it simply shows us what we are when we stop pretending to be what we're not. This ending asks the hardest questions of all. What if our humanity itself is a lie? What if civilization, progress, and connection are elaborate delusions? What if the only true path forward is to embrace the chaos we spent millennia trying to deny? Through the green-tinged streets of Brahevel, where ancient stones meet modern despair, Fear and Hunger 2 weaves three distinct paths toward transcendence, each culminating in endings that are not mere conclusions, but profound explorations of human nature, our complex relationship with divinity, and the steep costs we are willing to bear for salvation. The devastation of these paths lie not only in their cosmic implications, but also in how they intertwine with the deeply personal narratives of those who traverse them, revealing the intricate interplay of choice and consequence. The Machine God ending stands out as the most seemingly optimistic solution to the suffering of humanity. By activating all three telerelectroscopes and journeying to the depths of the White Bunker, players encounter Logic, the Machine God, who embodies humanity's potential for technological ascension. Logic is a new divinity, one born not from ancient power but from human innovation. The green hue enveloping her recalls the primal soup from which the old gods emerged, suggesting that humanity has found a way to replicate divine creation through technology. This presents a vision of progress, a future where suffering is alleviated through collective experience. For Olivia, this path holds unbearable poignance. Her desperate search for her sister, Relia, culminates in a reunion that transcends mere physical embrace. It presents the opportunity to merge not just their minds, but their very beings into a single entity. Years of separation, anxiety, and longing are resolved in a unity so profound that it raises troubling questions. Can one truly love another when the very concept of individual identity dissolves? This ending presents a powerful commentary on the cost of connection, one that forces players to consider whether the ultimate sacrifice of self is worth the promise of unending unity. Marina's story intersects with Logic's ascension in a compelling way. A seasoned practitioner of occultism, she returns to confront the religious corruption that has plagued her hometown. Yet, in the face of this new technological divinity, her expertise in ancient rituals seems almost quaint. The emergence of a god born from circuits and silicon renders her traditional magic obsolete, leaving her to grapple with the realization that perhaps the salvation she seeks through ancient power may only be attainable through this radical technological transformation. Having witnessed the devastating toll of blind faith, Marina finds herself contemplating whether this new divinity might be the only path worth pursuing, even as it demands its own price. Daan, the healer, offers another perspective on this collective unconsciousness. He envisions a future where the barriers between doctor and patient dissolve, allowing for a seamless understanding of pain and suffering. Every patient he couldn't save, every trauma he couldn't heal, could potentially be resolved through the perfect unity of experience. Yet the weight of his past, the loss of his wife to supernatural forces, and the sacrifice of his own eye in a failed resurrection attempt, cast a long shadow over his hopes. Daan understands that while the prospect of merging into a collective consciousness offers solace, it comes at the price of individuality and the nuanced insights that arise from personal suffering. This realization embodies the complex nature of healing and connection, highlighting the delicate balance between unity and the preservation of self. In stark contrast, the Survivor ending embraces absolute individuality amidst trauma, presenting a path that resonates with a deep understanding of the human experience. Achieved by outlasting other contestants until day 4, this ending focuses on the weight of personal experience, where each character's epilogue reflects the unique way they cope with their burdens. Karin, the journalist driven by an insatiable quest for truth, finds herself cursed by the vast knowledge she acquires. The cosmic horrors she encounters become too immense for her to fully comprehend or articulate, isolating her from those around her. Her survival transforms into a burden, highlighting the painful cost of individual knowledge devoid of collective understanding, a poignant reminder of the loneliness that often accompanies profound insight. Levi's journey starkly illustrates the inescapability of trauma. A former soldier haunted by the past, he finds himself in a relentless cycle of flight, fleeing from memories of conflict, addiction, and the very city that bore him. His epilogue suggests that there is no true escape from trauma. Rather, it is about how one carries it. Each new city offers only temporary refuge, as the nightmare inevitably catches up with him, forever a refugee from his own memories. Levi's story encapsulates the heavy toll that survival can exact on the human spirit, posing questions about the price of enduring against all odds. Marco's path diverges in a different direction, where his survival leads him to open a boxing gym. He aims to teach others to defend themselves against the horror he hopes they will never have to face. Here, his individual trauma transforms into a tool for community protection, reflecting the interconnectedness of personal experiences and collective resilience. Yet the epilogue hints at the guilt he carries for those he couldn't save, for the choices that haunt him, and for surviving when others did not. Marco's journey suggests that the only way to navigate the burden of individual survival is to convert it into service for others, highlighting the profound interplay between personal pain and the responsibility to protect one's community. In contrast, the Sulphur God ending offers perhaps the darkest form of transcendence available in Termina. By embracing chaos over order, players can reject both logic's collective consciousness and the structure path of humanity. The Sulphur God embodies a liberation that comes through the abandonment of all moral constraints, drawing in cultists like Needles, Stitches, and Percolate, each representing different facets of this seductive chaos. This path reveals a chilling alternative to the other endings. Not unity like logic, not individual survival like the festival's victor, but absolute chaos that grants permission for humanity's darker impulses to emerge. Osa, a yellow mage, who has already wielded divine power for personal gain, stands at the crossroads of this chaotic path. His journey forces him to confront the fine line between independence and monstrosity, as he grapples with the implications of complete moral abdication. His mastery of the old ways make him particularly vulnerable to the whispers of the Sulphur God, prompting him to question whether this chaotic power is simply another form of autonomy to be harnessed. Yet he must reckon with the reality that complete abandonment of ethics leads to unforeseen horrors, revealing the dangers of forsaking responsibility for the allure of power. Abella's encounter with the Sulphur God carries particular weight. As a resistance fighter against oppressive systems, she recognizes that while the Sulphur God's chaos may appear liberating, it ultimately annihilates everything she has fought for. Human connections, shared struggles, and the possibility of collaborative progress. Her understanding of mechanical systems and community dynamics provides her with unique insight into the high cost of embracing pure chaos, rendering her wary of its seductive allure. This internal conflict illustrates the profound impact of one's values on the choices they make, especially when faced with the temptation of unchecked power. What makes these endings so effective is their engagement with both personal and universal themes. On a deeply individual level, they showcase how characters cope with trauma, navigate moral dilemmas, and grapple with the implications of their choices. On a broader scale, they embody different potential trajectories for humanity itself. Technological unity, individual survival, or an embrace of chaos. The mechanical paths leading to these endings further reinforce their thematic weight. Logic's ascension necessitates coordinated activation of technology. The Survivor ending demands careful resource management and moral decision-making. And the Sulphur God's embrace requires players to reject conventional progress entirely. Yet perhaps the most haunting aspect of these endings is that none of them offers complete resolution. The Machine God's paradise comes at the cost of self-surrender, where those who join Logic's collective sacrifice their individuality for the promise of shared existence, forever changed by the trials they faced. The Sulphur God's brand of freedom emerges through chaos and destruction, illuminating the darker facets of human nature and the costs associated with unfettered liberation. Each ending suggests that all forms of progress, survival, and transcendence come with a price, prompting the profound inquiry not of whether we are willing to pay, but which costs we are prepared to bear. In this way, Termina's endings serve as perfect capstones to its overarching themes, illuminating how human beings confront impossible choices, how we carry our experiences, and how we decide what to preserve or sacrifice in the face of forces beyond our comprehension. The game refrains from judging these choices, instead laying bare their consequences with unflinching clarity. The moral ambiguity invites players to reflect on their own values and beliefs as they navigate the intricate tapestry of human experience. Ultimately, Termina suggests that the pursuit of transcendence might be a false goal, as the true horror does not lie in the monstrous beings that roam the world, or the cosmic gods lurking in the shadows, but in the acknowledgement that human nature encompasses all possible salvations and damnations simultaneously. We possess the capacity to sacrifice individuality for collective peace, to survive at any cost, and to abandon all moral grounding in pursuit of power. The choice presented to players is not between paths of good and evil, but rather among different forms of surrender to the essence of what we already are. As we return to that train platform where 14 strangers first gathered, the green moon still grins overhead, its smile now revealing our own faces. It does not mock our suffering, but rather reflects what we are capable of becoming. The real festival of Termina isn't merely the 3 days in Preheval, but the ongoing struggle within human nature itself, wherein we each decide which parts of our humanity we are willing to sacrifice in search of something greater. Whether we dissolve into logic's network, survive alone, or embrace chaos, we can never return to that moment of simple humanity on the platform. The horror lies not only in the choices forced upon us, but also in the truths each option unveils about who we already are. A mirror reflecting our deepest nature back at us, grinning like that terrible moon. Before we dissect Termina's intricate mechanics and what they mean, we need to understand something crucial about how the game operates on our psyche. This isn't just a story about corruption and transformation, it's an experience that forces us to participate in that corruption, to become knowing architects of our own tragedy. The game's systems don't just support its narrative, they are the narrative, each mechanical choice carrying the weight of inevitable consequences. Consider what we know. 14 strangers, a cursed city, a 3-day countdown to either salvation or damnation, a moon that watches, a festival that demands sacrifice, gods that hunger. But knowing the plot points isn't the same as understanding how the game makes us feel these elements in our bones. It's in the space between what we know will happen and how we choose to play through it that Termina finds its true horror. Take something as simple as the train where our journey begins. As a game mechanic, it's a safe zone, a place to rest, save, and manage our party. But it's also a museum of loss, each return marking another empty seat, another companion transformed or lost to the festival's demands. The mechanical comfort of having a reliable save point becomes psychological torture. We return not just to save our progress, but to witness the gradual dissolution of any hope for collective survival. This is how Termina operates, by making us complicit in its horrors through the very act of playing it. Every system, from combat to resource management to character progression, serves dual purpose as both gameplay mechanic and psychological weapon. The game doesn't just tell us about the festival's cruel demands. It makes us enact them, forces us to make choices that would be unthinkable if they weren't dressed in the familiar clothes of RPG mechanics. What follows is an examination of how these systems work together to create something more than the sum of their parts. We'll look at how each mechanical choice carries thematic weight, how the game's systems reinforce its philosophical questions, and how the very act of playing becomes a form of participation in the festival's dark purpose. But remember, in Termina, understanding the machinery of horror doesn't make it any less effective. If anything, seeing how the gears turn only makes the experience more profound. Time in Preheval isn't just passing, it's decaying. The 3-day structure of the festival reveals itself not as a simple deadline, but as a methodical dismantling of hope. Each time you rest, each moment you spend healing or gathering resources, you're watching the city spiral into madness in real time. The game's save system becomes almost cruelly elegant in this context. Every moment of respite brings a transformation of another soul, another friend, another piece of your own humanity. There's a moment in Termina that perfectly encapsulates its genius. Watching Marco teach Tanaka to box outside the train. On the surface, it's a simple mechanical interaction, one character training another. But when you understand what's coming, the scene becomes almost unbearable. Every practice jab, every lesson about footwork carries the weight of borrowed time. These men are preparing for a future that will never arrive, their friendship doomed by divine decree. The party system reveals its true brilliance when viewed through the lens of inevitable corruption. Each companion brings not just their abilities to your group, but their vulnerabilities, their fears, their potential for transformation. Olivia's wheelchair mechanics aren't just about mobility. They're about dependency, about trust in a world where trust becomes increasingly impossible. Marina's occult powers carry the weight of her father's legacy, each spell bringing her closer to the very forces she sought to escape. Abella's engineering expertise make her invaluable early on. She can repair mechanisms, unlock doors, solve the puzzles that plague Preheval's infrastructure. But her very competence becomes tragic foreshadowing. Here is someone who understands how things work, who believes in the rational world of cause and effect, destined to become Shagna, a being that defies physical laws. Her mechanical abilities don't save her. They make her transformation more profound. Resource management takes on new meaning when we understand the 3 possible paths through upheaval. Every bullet saved could be the one that prevents a friend's transformation. Every healing item hoarded might be the difference between retaining humanity and succumbing to the moon's influence. The game forces you to become complicit in its systems of sacrifice. Every survivor requires deaths. Every victory demands loss. The rev-up combat system perfectly encapsulates this theme of building power through corruption. As characters bank their rage and pain for stronger attacks, they're literally weaponizing their trauma. By the time we reach day 3, when the moon scorch begins claiming victims in earnest, these mechanics reveal themselves as training wheels for the horror to come. We've been practicing transformation all along, one battle at a time. This mechanical complexity reaches its peak in the game's treatment of mental health. The mind gauge isn't just another resource to manage, it's a measure of how much reality you can bear to perceive. When characters break under the strain, their mechanical penalties reflect a fundamental truth about upheaval. Sometimes madness is the only sane response to an insane world. The game's save zones, the train and upheaval bob, take on almost tragic significance when we understand their true nature. Those aren't just checkpoints, they're museums of lost humanity. Each time you return, you might find another companion transformed, another empty seat, another reminder that safety is always temporary. The mechanical act of saving becomes a memorial to what was lost between visits. In this way, Termina's systems create a clockwork of inevitable decay, each gear and lever precisely calibrated to strip away illusions of agency, while paradoxically making players' choice feel more meaningful than ever. It's a masterclass in using game mechanics, not just to create challenge or engagement, but to reinforce emotional and philosophical themes at every level. In the dying city of upheaval, horror manifests not as a single darkness, but as a cascade of terrors, each feeding into the next. The sickly green moon hangs overhead like a mocking eye, its light transforming flesh and mind alike. This transformation serves as our first window into Termina's masterful layering of horror. A symphony of body horror, cosmic terror, and human cruelty that builds to a devastating crescendo. These transformations aren't merely aesthetic choices. Each warped form serves as a dark mirror, reflecting the inner truths its victims has tried to suppress. The horror lies not just in the physical metamorphosis, but in the revelation that our darkest aspects can be forcibly exposed, turned outward for all to see. This violation of the boundary between inner and outer self creates a profound unease that persists long after witnessing each transformation. The physical horror extends beyond Moonscorch. Every combat encounter carries the risk of permanent dismemberment, creating wounds that persist throughout the game. Unlike its predecessor, Termina offers more opportunities for healing through Sylvian's rituals, but this only serves to emphasize how precious and vulnerable the intact human form remains. The game forces us to confront our body's fragility, while simultaneously showing how that same body can be twisted into forms that deny humanity altogether. Yet these visceral horrors are merely the surface ripples of deeper cosmic terrors. Termina presents a world where gods are not distant mysteries, but active participants in human suffering. The divine hierarchy, from the primordial old gods to the ascended gods who were once human, to the new gods who retain their mortality despite their power, creates a terrifying comprehensibility to humans' place in the universe. We aren't ignorant of the gods, we're all too aware of our position as playthings in their games. The Festival of Termina itself exemplifies this cruel cosmic joke. Orchestrated seemingly by Rare, the jealous moon god who refuses to share divinity with humans, the festival initially appears to be a simple battle royale. Yet even as this truth crumbles, revealing that Rare had already departed the world, the festival continues under the manipulation of the sulfur god's cult, suggesting that every cosmic truth we grasp only leads to deeper, more disturbing revelations about the nature of reality. Perhaps most disturbing is how human beings in Termina match or exceed divine cruelty. The city of upheaval, still bearing fresh scars from this world's version of World War II, shows how institutions meant to protect and nurture become vessels for abuse and sacrifice. The Church of All-Mer masks dark rituals behind its respectable facade. The orphanage meant to shelter children instead exploits them. The Bremen's Empire occupation has left wounds that may never heal, while underground bunkers hide technological atrocities committed in the name of progress. The game forces players to confront this human capacity for evil through its core mechanics. To survive and progress, you must decide whether to help or harm other contestants. The Soulstone system tempts you with power earned through murder. Each kill grants you the abilities of your victim, mechanically representing how people can be corrupted by the promise of power. Yet what makes this system truly haunting is that it's entirely optional. Every act of violence is a choice, not a necessity. What elevates Termina's horror above mere shock is how it maintains humanity's capacity for good alongside its potential for evil. In the midst of cosmic horror and body horror, we witness moments of profound kindness. Marco risks his life to find a new wheelchair for Olivia. Abella offers comfort to Levi about his traumatic past. Strangers form bonds, even knowing they may have to break them. These glimpses of compassion make the horror more affecting because they remind us that cruelty is not inevitable. It's a choice we have to make. The game's 3-day timeline becomes a pressure cooker for these elements, each layer of horror intensifying the others. The Moonscorch transformations born of divine jealousy reveal human nature's darkest aspects. The underground bunkers built by human ambition house experiments to create a machine god that will transform humanity forever. Every horror reflects and retracts through the others, creating an atmosphere of escalating dread that works on multiple levels. In the end, Termina's horror succeeds because it understands that true terror lies not in the unknown, but in the gradually revealed. Each layer of horror peels back to expose another, more disturbing truth, until we realize that the real horror may not be the gods above or the monsters within, but the choices we make when pushed to our limits. In Prehivel's dying days, we learn that the capacity for both horror and hope rests not in divine hands, but in human ones. Despite the cosmic horrors looming overhead, and the monsters prowling Prehivel streets, Fear and Hunger 2, Termina, is at its best a deeply humanistic work. In the face of divine manipulation and impending doom, the game presents a startling thesis. That human connection, compassion, and choice remain powerful forces even in the darkest of circumstances. The relationships that form between contestants reveal this human element most clearly. Consider the unlikely friendship between Marco and Olivia. A former underground boxer haunted by violence, Marco could easily embrace the festival's bloodsport. Instead, he becomes Olivia's protector, risking his life to find her a new wheelchair. Their bond transforms them both. Olivia gains confidence in her capabilities beyond her disability, while Marco finds purpose beyond violence. Even Tanaka, initially driven by corporate ambition, discovers his own courage through their influence. These moments of connection aren't mere narrative flourishes. The game's party dialogue system reveals layers of personality and vulnerability in characters who could have easily been reduced to their tragic backstories. Marina, despite her occult knowledge, shows a playful side in her banter. Osa's cynical facade occasionally cracks to reveal genuine curiosity about human nature. Even Levi, traumatized by war, finds moments of peace in simple conversations about everyday life. What makes these relationships more poignant is the knowledge that they may be temporary. The festival demands a sole survivor, and every friend can become an enemy. Yet many contestants resist this divine decree. They form alliances, share resources, and protect each other, despite knowing that their kindness may later be repaid with violence. This tension between human connection and survival creates moments of genuine moral complexity that transcend simple good versus evil. This emphasis on choice extends to the game's core progression system. While killing other contestants grants their souls and powers, strengthening your character tremendously, it's entirely possible to complete the game without harming another contestant. This mechanical freedom creates genuine moral weight. Every act of violence is a choice, not a necessity forced by the game systems. Perhaps most fascinating is how the game portrays humanity's relationship with its gods. The god of fear and hunger, born from the first game's events, represents a uniquely human perspective on divinity. She brings suffering to the world, not out of malice, but from a belief that adversity strengthens human character. Her save points in Termina represent this philosophy, offering respite while acknowledging that the journey ahead remains difficult. It's a strangely compassionate view of suffering, born from a god who remembers her human origins. This complex relationship with divinity manifests in how characters maintain their faith, or lack thereof, throughout the festival. Marina practices occult arts while rejecting religious authority. Daan questions his relationship with Sylvian after personal tragedy. Osa seeks to manipulate divine power rather than worship it. Each character's spiritual journey reflects very human struggles with faith, power, and meaning in a world where gods are tangibly real, but not necessarily worthy of devotion. Even the game's most horrific elements serve to highlight human resilience. The moon-scorched transformations reveal inner truths about its victims, yet some characters maintain traces of their humanity, even in monstrous form. Henrique, despite his transformation into the gentleman, still attempts to maintain a twisted form of civility. These remnants of human consciousness make the transformations more tragic, but also suggest that humanity persists even under the most extreme corruption. What emerges from Termina's dark journey is a portrait of humanity that acknowledges both our capacity for cruelty and our potential for connection. In Prehivel's dying days, we see how people respond to crisis. Some break, some transform, some find strength they never knew they had. Through its interweaving of horror and hope, the game suggests that what makes us human isn't our resistance to darkness, but how we choose to carry our light through it. The relationships formed, the mercy shown, the sacrifices made. These moments of humanity shine brighter precisely because of the darkness surrounding them. In a world where gods treat humans as playthings, where cosmic forces twist flesh and mind, where ancient evils corrupt the very air, Terminus argues that our human capacity for choice, connection, and compassion remains our most powerful weapon against despair. Underneath Termina's narrative ambitions lies an intricate framework of game systems that elevates it beyond its predecessor. What's remarkable isn't just the mechanical improvements, but how every technical choice reinforces the game's themes of time, choice, and consequence. Firearms, introduced to match the 1942 setting, fundamentally change how players approach encounters. The ability to attack enemies in the overworld before combat begins adds a layer of tactical consideration absent from the first game. Yet ammunition remains precious, creating constant decisions about resource management. The scarcity maintains tension while reflecting the war-torn setting's depleted resources. Perhaps most impressive is how the game handles its multiple playable characters. Each protagonist brings unique abilities and weaknesses that fundamentally change how you approach challenges. Olivia's wheelchair mechanics create distinct tactical considerations. Marco's bare-handed combat expertise enables aggressive playstyles. Marina's occult knowledge opens alternate solutions to problems. These aren't merely statistical differences. Each character's capabilities reflect their personality and background, while creating genuinely difficult and different gameplay experiences. The game's approach to difficulty also shows remarkable sophistication. The standard mode provides anti-frustration features absent from the first game, more save points, clearer item tracking, and less punishing RNG. Yet the Meso X SM mode strips these away, while adding new threats like active moonscorch radiation, creating an experience of pure survival horror for players seeking ultimate challenge. This tiered difficulty approach makes the game more accessible without compromising its capacity for terror. The environmental design deserves particular praise for how it supports both gameplay and narrative. Prehivel's layout creates natural barriers that guide exploration while feeling organic to the setting. The underground network of tunnels and bunkers provides alternate routes that reward thorough investigation. Most impressively, the environment changes subtly over the 3 days, reflecting the festival's growing influence and the city's decay. Safe zones like the train and Prehivel Bob serve multiple functions brilliantly. They provide necessary respite from the horror, while acting as social hubs where character relationships develop. The mechanical benefits of rest and recovery are balanced against the cost of time spent here. Even these moments of safety carry narrative weight. The contrast between the jazz club's normalcy and the horror outside makes both more affecting. The technical achievement extends to the game's presentation. The use of lighting and shadow creates atmosphere while communicating mechanical information about threats. The sound design masterfully builds tension through ambient noise while using silence to highlight key moments. Even the user interface shows careful consideration, providing necessary information without breaking immersion. What makes all these technical elements truly impressive is how seamlessly they work together. The schedule system influences combat encounters, which affect resource management, which impacts party dynamics, which shapes the narrative outcomes. Every system reinforces the other, while supporting the game's broader themes about time, choice, and human nature under pressure. In the end, Termina's technical achievements aren't just improvements over its predecessor. They represent a fundamental understanding of how game mechanics can serve storytelling. Every system, from the grandest to the most minute, works in concert to create an experience where the how of play is as meaningful as the what of the narrative. In Prehival's final hours, beneath a moon that grins like an open wound, Fear and Hunger 2 presents a truth more disturbing than any cosmic horror. When faced with forces beyond comprehension, humans don't cower. We adapt, we scheme, we reach for power we were never meant to hold, and in doing so, we become something perhaps more terrible than the gods themselves. Consider Project Logic, humanity's grotesque attempt to birth our own divinity. Deep beneath Prehival, in bunkers stained with the blood of experiments we dare not count, humans didn't simply hide from cosmic power. We attempted to replicate it, to systemize it, to turn the incomprehensible into technology. The Machine God ending shows us succeeding, yet this victory tastes of ash. We replace eldritch gods with a hive mind of our own making, trading one form of obliteration for another. Our greatest triumph becomes another kind of extinction. The game's mechanics serves as a mirror to this ambition. The Soulstone system reveals how readily we embrace cannibalism, literal and metaphorical, in our quest for power. The game doesn't force these choices upon us, however, it simply watches with the same detached curiosity as Rare's Moon, as we choose to become monsters. Even the game's moments of apparent humanity carry poisoned roots. Yes, Marco helps Olivia, yes, bonds form between contestants, but these acts of kindness exist in a system designed to make them temporary, to transform them into deeper wounds when betrayal comes. The Moonscorch itself serves as Termina's most potent metaphor. Each transformation reveals not what cosmic forces do to us, but what was always lurking within us. Abella's Chaugnar form, Olivia's mechanical dance, Daan's absorption into Pocket Cat. These aren't simply corruptions, they're revelations. The moon doesn't create monsters, it simply illuminates the monsters we already were, strips away our pretense of civilization until only truth remains. Religions in Termina offer no comfort. The gods are real, yes, but this reality only makes them more horrifying. The Church of Ormur's rituals, the new god's politicking, the old god's abandonment, all suggest that divinity itself is merely power exercised on a grander scale. Even the god of fear and hunger, born from human ascension, perpetuates suffering in the name of progress. The game suggests that worship isn't a matter of faith, but of choosing which form of subjugation we prefer. Setting this horror in an alternate 1942 proves devastatingly effective. The Bremen Empire's very human atrocities run parallel to supernatural horror, suggesting that industrialized cruelty might be humanity's true gift to the universe. We didn't need eldritch gods to teach us about systemic slaughter. We developed those skills quite well on our own. Project Logic simply represents the next step, weaponizing cosmic horror itself through technology. What makes Termina truly disturbing isn't its cosmic horror, but its human horror. The way it shows how readily we adapt to nightmare. The save system transforms rest into a resource to be hoarded. The combat system turns dismemberment into tactical advantage. Even the party system makes friendship transactional, each ally a potential resource to be expended. We don't merely survive horror, we systematize it, commodify it, make it part of our toolkit. Perhaps most chillingly, Termina suggests that this adaptation, this willingness to embrace horror as a tool, might be humanity's true destiny. The old gods departed, leaving traces of their power behind. But humans? We study those traces, we replicate them, we build machines to harness them. Given enough time, enough sacrifice, enough determination, we might achieve something worse than godhood. We might make cosmic horror routine. In the end, Termina transforms cosmic horror from a genre about human insignificance into one about human potential, and that potential proves far more terrifying than any unknowable entity. Through its systems and narrative, it shows how human ingenuity, ambition, and choice makes us not victims of cosmic horror, but its inheritors, its students, and perhaps its ultimate practitioners. The game's final question isn't whether we can survive in a universe of malevolent gods and cosmic forces, it's whether anything in that universe can survive us. As Prelude's moon grins down at its festival of transformation, the answer remains unclear, but the silence that follows that question might be the most horrifying sound of all. Fear and Hunger 2, Termina, stands as both culmination and subversion of cosmic horror's traditional elements, where Lovecraft and his successors emphasized humanity's insignificance in the face of incomprehensible forces. Haverinen's work suggests something far more disturbing. Given time and determination, humans might become the most horrifying force in any universe we inhabit. But this simple subversion is only the beginning of what makes Termina so devastating. Consider how thoroughly the game dismantles every comforting assumption about human nature. The Festival of Termina appears at first to be a divine punishment, a cruel game orchestrated by a jealous god. Yet as we delve deeper, we discover that Re, the moon god, has already departed this world. What remains is merely his trace, a lingering power that humans have learned to harness for their own dark purposes. The sulfur cultists don't simply worship ancient horror. They systemize it, weaponize it, turn divine cruelty into a reproducible ritual. Even our torment has become another technology to master. This pattern repeats throughout every aspect of the game. The Church of Ulmer doesn't merely hide dark secrets, it improves upon them, refining ancient rites into efficient systems of sacrifice. The Bremen Empire's human atrocities run parallel to supernatural horror, suggesting that we didn't need Eldritch God to teach us about systemic slaughter. Project Logic represents the ultimate expression of this tendency. Humanity's attempts to industrialize divine power itself, to turn cosmic horror into a networked technology. What makes Termina so devastating isn't just its subversion of cosmic horror tropes, it's the game's understanding that true horrors lies not in what happens to us, but in what we choose to become. Under its sickly green moon, in the shadow of the Hollow Tower, the game suggests that humanity's defining trait isn't our fragility in the face of cosmic forces, but our terrifying adaptability, our relentless drive to understand, systematize, and ultimately reproduce that which should destroy us. Released into a world grappling with technological acceleration, social atomization, and institutional collapse, Termina's questions about progress and power feel uncomfortably relevant. Perhaps most importantly, Termina forces us to confront the possibility that cosmic horror's traditional focus on human insignificance might have been asking the wrong question all along. The real horror isn't that we're insignificant in the face of cosmic forces, it's that we might be all too significant, all too capable of learning, adapting, and ultimately surpassing the very horrors that should destroy us. The real question Termina leaves us with isn't whether humanity can survive in a universe of horror, it's whether anything in that universe can survive us. As the festival draws to its close, as the moon's light transforms flesh and mind alike, as human ingenuity bursts new forms of extinction, we begin to understand the game's most terrifying suggestion, that in the grand cosmic horror story of existence, humanity might not be the victim, or even the survivor. We might be the final boss. And as Prelude's moon grins down at its festival of transformation, as the old gods retreat from the horrors we've learned to create, as we perfect our systems of industrialized nightmare, we might finally understand why they left. Not because we were insignificant, but because they saw what we were becoming. And in that becoming lies a darkness deeper than any god's shadow, a horror more perfect than any cosmic force could devise. The horror of human potential, fully realized. In Termina's dying city, under its sickly green moon, we don't simply face horror, we perfect it. And in that perfection, in that relentless drive to systematize even our own destruction, we achieve something far worse than godhood. We become ourselves. First of all, thank you so much to the channel members, Icebear, Chaponis, I'll put it on the screen, sorry if I butchered it, and thank you all so much. Oh, and that was that. Well, thanks for watching, I guess. Sorry this video is probably going to take a lot longer. Well, a bit longer than the last two. And I just wasn't... I kept going over and over and over the script, so... I'm still not that happy with it, but I wanted to, you know, get it out. As someone said at some point, perfect is the enemy of good or some shit like that, I don't know. So I thought I'd get it out. If there are any mistakes or anything, I'm sorry. Writing this was kind of a blur, honestly. But yeah. Also, sorry, I tried to go more like creative liberty with it. So if I got something in the wrong order, or some minor details wrong, or I made some characters, you know, think how they wouldn't, then I'm sorry. But I tried to do everything as I think the characters would do it, and trying to make everything go together along with actually analyzing it. So yeah, let me know if you enjoyed this. Let me know if you like this style, or if you prefer the other styles where I just talk about the analysis and stuff. I've been trying to do more like narrative-based stuff along with the analysis, like in the Soma video. But yeah, I think next I'm either going to do a Red Dead 2 deep dive or Signalis deep dive. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure. I just really wanted to get this out because it's been, oh god, it has been my birthday as well, and I was ill for like a week with my fucking, and I said it so nasally, and I don't really want to record when I sound like that because you guys don't deserve that. But yeah, if you did enjoy, make sure to like and subscribe as per usual. You don't have to, obviously, but follow my Twitter because I want to have enough followers so Pyrocynical follows me back. Please, Pyro, please. I have something to show you. No, I have Patreon down below if you would like to take a look. Obviously, you don't have to, and you know I'm not gonna fucking hold you at gunpoint and make you subscribe. But you can also be a channel member if you want. Oh yeah, that is a good point actually. Just remember to go record the thank you for the members. But yeah, if you don't want to become a member, you get a shout out at the end of the video, as demonstrated earlier, and you get 1 day early access to videos for whenever I do release. I try and do one of these every like 2 weeks, but with uni and stuff and exams and stuff coming up, it's getting tight. So sorry if the schedule's a bit off, but I've got about a month left of uni before I break up, and then I do have a job, so Christmas time I will try and upload as much as I can, because other than working, I'm not going to be doing much. So yeah, make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Also, let me know what you want to see next if you don't want to see Signalis or Red Dead 2. Not that you already have a choice, but yeah. Anyway, thank you all so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.